clicker.
I don't have a clicker.
Clicker always lost.
That I can tell you, like, no, it's in here.
It's in there.
And actually, since men's retreat, I've started sending myself emails with it on my phone. So at least have my notes. So that way I'm a little bit ahead of everybody else. Now, Don said something about getting started earlier. Get started early if I can get done earlier. But then he talked.
That's all you do.
So, he talked to me until it's time to start. So we'll see what we can do. We might get out a little early. All right, we want to take a look tonight at Rachel and Leah. And the thing, if you notice up here, I got Genesis 22:20 to 23, because a lot of Rachel and Leah goes back to who they are, where they came from. And if you go back to Genesis 22:20 to 23, now it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, indeed, Milcah also has borne children to your brother Nahor. Now, the context of chapter 22 has the offering up of Isaac. So it's this time that Abraham finds out his brother has children. And he says, Huz is firstborn, Buz is brother, Kemuel the father of Aram, Chiez, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Now Bethuel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. And of course we know that later Abraham would send his servant Bethuel to get Isaac a wife. And so then when Isaac has children, he ends up having some problems. But anyway, we got some, okay. These are back at, I haven't given my thought where I'm at. Because there's a lot in here I'm skipping over. Because going back here, we find where after Isaac has Jacob and Esau, what was the problem with Jacob and Esau? They struggled. Even in the womb, they struggled. And so then after Jacob steals the blessing, and I kind of wonder about that sometimes when we use the term steals, and that's kind of a side note because he had the birthright. Was the birthright given?
Probably David's worse son, but you were.
Yeah, but he traded with Esau to get the birthright, and the birthright really gave him the right of the blessing.
But then the mama helped him out.
Mama helped him out on getting the blessing, and conniving. And that's something that if we went through Rebecca and Isaac would be kind of point of why you should probably favorites, but that kind of Jacob too. But we're not going through the men. But notice in the words of Esau, our older son, were told Rebekah, the words were that he was going to kill Jacob as soon as Isaac died. Kind of like the old Godfather movie, nothing happens to Fredo as long as my mother's alive. Same thought there. And said, surely your brother comforts himself concerning you by intending to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, arise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran. And stay with him a few days until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you. Now, we know, and he forgets what you have done to him, then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I bereave also of you both in one day? What does she mean by that? Bereave of both of them in one day. What happens to Esau if he murders Jacob? He's probably going to end up getting stoned. Even in his under the patriarchal law, it had a bill of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So that's her point there. So moving on, let's get into Rachel and Jacob and Leah. In Genesis 29, verse 9 to 14 read, "Now while he was still speaking with him, these were shepherds that were gathered at the well. Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came to pass when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's relative and that he was Rebekah's son. So she ran and told her father. Then it came to pass when Laban heard the report about Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. So he told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, Surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him for a month." Okay, roughly, if Laban is his uncle, what is he and Rachel?
First cousins.
Huh?
First
First cousins. They're also, because of Rebekah's relationship, and there's some distant cousins. It's one of those deals that can get real confusing if you go look at it in those early days and how people are related. The point of it is Jacob's finally arrived where he was trying to go. Haran was up in Syria. In fact, several times the scripture refers to Laban as Laban the Syrian. And he's happy to find family. Why are we always happy to find family? What do we expect from family versus strangers? Love, help, hospitality. How about just plain old being treated right?
Yeah.
How often does it in reality happen?
Depends on if you're in the South or the North.
It depends whether you're in the South or the North. Yeah. There's a saying, blood is thicker than water, but it's according to where that water is. Then Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what would your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. I want to stop there for a minute. Some translations where it says Leah's eyes were delicate, say tender. There's one that says teary-eyed. It was almost like perhaps she had sad-looking eyes, like bags or something under her eyes. That some are saying that they, but it took something away from her appearance, evidently. And I kind of had a thought about this today. Laban agrees to this. He says, it's better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me. Now, Jacob works that 7 years, but that's not how the gift he gets, is it? Laban knew ahead of time. He knew she was older at the time he told him that. I think if he had said, well, if by then Leah's married, okay. Might have been a better clause, but I don't think he had any intent. I don't think he thought he could marry her. Notice, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed only a few days to him because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. Now it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. And Laban gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. Okay? So it came to pass in the morning that behold, it was Leah, and he said to Laban, what is this that you have done? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you deceived me? Okay, let's stop there. Why did it take till morning?
Really drunk.
Really drunk. It would have been dark. We got to remember, they didn't have the lights we have.
And then they have had a lot of marriage ceremonies.
A lot of marriage ceremony, a lot of stuff. As he said, wine, so it could have let them be really drunk. And it could have been the fact that probably when they went in the tent together, it was dark in there. And, you know, as far as we know, other than the only difference really was facial. You know, we don't know if there being a difference in the body shape. And so you know, could have been there no moon that night, what have you. But evidently, he didn't know. He didn't know. And Laban said it is not to be, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. There's a lot of places that still people that want to hold to that, isn't there? Fulfill her week, and we will give you this one also for the service which you will serve with me still another years. So, what does it mean, fulfill her week?
They celebrated for a week.
She had the honeymoon. Basically, well, we got her week, her honeymoon. He's basically, you got to take care of her for this week, and then after that, I'll give you the other.
After 7 more days.
No, I used to think that.
Yeah.
But notice, then Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, so he gave him his daughter Rachel as wife also. So
Then you got to work.
then he had to work 7 years. So one was put on layaway, and the other he made payments. That's pretty much the way it was. You know, you ever put something on layaway? What does that mean? You make installments on it, and once you made all the payments, then you get it. Well, that's the way he did with Leah, thinking it was Rachel. Now, why do you think Laban said, okay, you fulfill her week, and I'll give you Rachel, and then you can work out that 7 years?
You wanted to make sure they were.
Yeah, because the deal of it was, you know, and it might have even been a little bit of Jacob, kind of like, you know what, I've been tricked before, I'm not being tricked again. So I want her up front. I'll work the 7 years, but I want to have her up front. And so it tells us, and Laban gave his maid, Bilhah, to his daughter Rachel as a maid, that Jacob also went into Rachel. And he also loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban till still another 7 years. Now, here's the question before we go forward. Is there a reason God said a man shall cleave unto his wife, and she shall cleave unto him? Now, I could be mistaken, but I don't know that I've ever read of there being two husbands. But there's always seemed to be somewhere a custom of more publicity of wives. Why aren't there two husbands?
Weren't there what?
Where there were two husbands married to the same woman?
And two husbands married to the same man.
I ain't going there.
The emperor, when time of Jesus, actually, I believe, or the one right after, he didn't have a good reputation.
Okay.
But he dressed them up like women for the wedding.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the fact that you never hear two men being married to the same woman. Why? Hey, you're gonna get on somebody. Let's be like, there's gonna be bloodshed. That's reality. There's gonna be bloodshed. Huh?
One would probably kill the other.
That's what I'm saying. There's gonna be bloodshed. And you know what? It's not that far from it when you put two women in the same household. There's always jealousy and strife. If you ever go out to Salt Lake, some houses out there, when the Mormons first moved out there and they had the multiplicity house, they'd have these houses that looked almost like duplex. And it was like, here's a house, a bigger house, and then a little small house, and another small house, another small house. And what it was, the first wife had the big house. The ones that came after them had the little addition that was added on to it. And that was to keep the first wife happy about there being other wives. Think about Solomon, what he had to do. He had to mark the doorpost every morning so he know where to go the next night. And I kind of think some of them, the way he writes Proverbs, he was probably glad he only had to see them once every 3 years. But here it tells us, you know, he went in Rachel and he loved Rachel more than Leah. Now, there's a Hebrew word here that is used, and it's also used in right here in this verse. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and it's often translated as hated. How do you know how to use it? It's going to come out of context, because it would go out to the point that you have to realize that it can go this same word from a very degree of just dislike, not really a hate, but just not caring for someone, all the way to the extreme of a hate that you want to kill them. And so it's how the context uses the word that you have to determine. And so some translations, most of them right here, will say that he loved Rachel more than Leah. And then in the next verse where it says, when the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren, it would say, I think King James says, that Leah was hated.
ESV says hated also.
ESV says hated. And that's because this word, the way it's translated, or the way it actually means. Here's a question that we have to ask. Would a man that hated a woman actually go into her? No. No, I don't think he hated her. He just didn't love her like he loved Rachel. Okay? And I think that's what God's trying to bear out in context. His love for Rachel was a pure love, almost a love at first sight type thing. You know, he'd only been there a month when he told Laban he wanted Rachel for a wife. There may have been some other qualities that he made him want her, but he truly wanted her. Leah, he kind of took, okay, she's mine, but she's not the one I wanted. I'm sure in Jacob's mind, he worked 14 years for Rachel. Not 7 for Leah and 7 for Rachel. In his mindset, because he got to get what he really wanted, he had to work 14 years. You know? And here's the other deal. How would you feel if you went through the trickery Jacob did? You think you're marrying one, and then you get the other one.
Probably where the word karma came from.
Word what?
Karma.
Karma?
Because he deceived his dad.
Well,
Now he's going to spend the next 20 years getting deceived in every conceivable way you can imagine.
yeah. Well, it's kind of.
What you reap, you're going to sow.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I kind of read what you saw. But what I want to understand is, Leah didn't speak up and say, hey, wait a minute, I'm Leah, I'm not Rachel. She wanted to be married. She didn't care about the trick. So there's a little problem between her and Jacob right now. You she's part of the deception. Even if you reap what you sow, you still ain't happy when you reap it. You might accept it, but you're not happy about it. Now, so it tells us that the Lord opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So Leah conceived, bore a son, and called his name Reuben. For she said, the Lord has surely looked on my affliction. Now therefore my husband will love me. What was her thought?
Give him children.
Give him children, he'll love me. He'll not give affection, but he'll literally treat me as a loving spouse. Then she conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he was therefore giving me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. She conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she stopped bearing. So after 4 sons, and her thought is each one about her husband. Right? Until the last one. Notice in the names she gave them, they all had something to do with about her affliction. Like my husband will come attached to me. This 3rd son will call him to be closer to me than he is Rachel. But then that last one, notice, now we'll praise the Lord. With Judah. You think that perhaps she came to the realization that it didn't matter what she did or how many kids she had, Jacob was always going to favor Rachel. But the Lord had provided her with sons, knowing she would be taken care of. On a side note, Jacob was around 40. Between 40, we know he was at 40 when Esau took his wives of the land. So he was over 40 years of age when this came place. A lot of them figure he was around 55 to 60, a lot of commentary. But there's nowhere in the scriptures that bear that out. It does tell us that Esau, when he married before the deception, when he took wives of the land, that he was 40 years of age. The only thing we ever have mention of Jacob's age is that he was 130 when he appears before Pharaoh, and then 147 when he dies. Now, Isaac was 60 when Jacob and Esau were born. And that's all we really know. But we know that they were of an older age, or he was, and he got older. And sometimes we read the scriptures as if, well, okay, this year they had this child, this year they had this child, this year they had this child, one right after the other. And it's probably not that rate of succession that we look for. There's probably time in between them. We need to keep that up because things are going on. And notice when Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob as wife. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, a troop comes. So she called his name Gad, and Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed. So she called his name Asher. Leah, in bearing her children and having more sons, and even through the handmaid, was saying, I can be happy with this. I'll accept that. I'll be content. But was she really that happy? Notice, now Reuben, in Genesis 30, Reuben went in the days of the wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. Now, interesting point of this question, and this tells us a little bit of the conflict between the two going in this house and how it plays out. Leah says, "You've taken away my husband." Was that kind of true? Who had him first? Yeah, whether it was by trickery or not, he was married to her first. And what she's saying is, we're not sharing him, you're taking him away. His real affection, his real care is for you. And notice what Rachel does with it. Give your man, therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's man race. You see something in Rachel's character there? Leah wanted Jacob to love her as she loved Rachel. And what did Rachel think about Jacob's love? It's good, but I got it no matter what. I can share it for a night. So when Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's maidservants." And he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. She ends up having another one, and a daughter also.
You ever wonder why this story is in the Bible?
Well, it wants us to know how the 12 tribes came about, but it also wants us to learn what kind of conflict we can have when we start dealing with things. I mean, here's the thing. If you thought two women could get along by being married to the same husband, wouldn't you think it'd be sisters?
No.
Offhand, though, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? If there were two women that could get along, wouldn't you expect it to be sisters? In the great scheme of things, not knowing what we know.
I think it'd be two women that didn't like their husband.
Well, that's true. You know, they both hated him, but he's probably not going to live very long in those circumstances. But the point I'm saying is, if you thought two women under the same house,
They should have loved each other something.
you think that the love for each other and for sisters, that would work out, right? You know, my father used to make this statement every time either one of my brothers got into an argument. He'd always tell us how his little brother died when he was 6 weeks old. And I'd have gave anything to have a little brother, because he had 6 sisters all over him. I remember one day he made that statement, and I said, "Not if you had one of mine." It's all according into how they get along. You'll find brothers that are inseparable, and you'll find brothers that don't get along for a minute. And that's the same way with sisters. But I think God's trying to tell us here's the wisdom in having one husband and one wife. It's just going to be conflict. Notice now, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, "Give me children or else I die." And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel. He said, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of your womb?" Now, I call her jealous and demanding. Because that's what she is. Notice she envied Rachel, or Leah. She had that little fear that the more children Leah had, the better chance of Rachel leaving her.
I think it's interesting. We hear a lot about Rachel and Leah, but he's about to be up to 5 women. When he gets up to 5 women, we're not hearing a whole lot about them. So,
Well, now,
and also the fact that Rachel hadn't conceived, she would be scorned by the community because, you know, that was,
And,
a woman who couldn't conceive was considered second
and
class.
you gotta, and at this point, they're still at home. They're still in the old homestead, home area. So everybody knows them, probably a lot of relatives, and there probably is that scorn, and there is that scorn, and probably some of it from Leah. You know?
Probably rubbing it in her chest.
Yeah. I mean, it don't take long when you go to the story about Hannah and Samuel's mother, what happened there? That wife's rubbing it in every chance you get. That second wife. And so Leah says, here's my maid Bilhah, go into her and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her. So here we go, and here's some more sons. Now these are after, were actually born after Leah stopped bearing children the first time, in between the handmaids. And I guess this is probably kind of where Leah got the idea, well, I'll give them my handmaid too. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened up her womb, and she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph and said, the Lord shall add to me another son.
This gives you a whole new approach, though, when you run across men and women that got 4, 5, 6 ex-husbands, wives, girlfriends, babies, mamas. Because that's what the children of Israel come at.
Yeah. I went to school with a couple of girls that had, between the two of them, one was a year younger than me, one was in the same grade. They had 10 brothers and sisters. There's 12 kids in all. Guess how many had the same daddy? Not one. But they all knew who their dad. They'd tell you, oh, they're so-and-so's daddy. And you're right, that's what it kind of came out of, except they were married. But there was all that U-Haul going along with it.
Well, there's only 2 of them married.
Well, okay,
You got 3 extras.
well, only 2 extras.
The neighbor, the secretary, the lady that cleaned the house.
You only had 2 extras.
There's 3 extras.
2.
They said, I thought you had 3.
No, you had Leah with,
Leah gave 2, Rachel gave 1.
no, Leah only gave 1. She only had 1. Leah had, let me go back up here.
I thought I heard 2.
Zilpah was her handmaid.
You got Zilpah,
And then you got Bilhah, which is Rachel's handmaid.
but Leah gives another.
No, Leah starts having children again.
Oh, she started having.
Yeah.
Oh, so we just got
After
2.
she had the 4, she had 2 more. After the handmaid stopped giving kids, she started having kids, plus she had a daughter.
You got the mandrake baby.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the mandrake baby. That's this one. And so there's a point of it, and that leads to a problem too, because you're right, he's not really married to them, but it's kind of like what Sarah did with Hagar. It was kind of looked upon if they were possession of the wife, and the wife gave permission, you could have children of them. And look at how Rachel felt out of it. She said, and Leah too, because they're my handmaid. These kids are not theirs, they're mine.
In essence, the handmaid was a slave.
Yeah, the handmaid was a slave. Might be where Thomas Jefferson got the idea.
Yeah.
But anyway,
In today's world, that'd be considered prostitution.
there's a lot of things in today's world that we consider, but yeah, prostitution would be the least close.
Well, I bring this up because I think about, I deal with a lot of family situations. And And over the years, there's a lot of judgment against people that are in these situations. And then these kids end up being the 12 tribes of Israel. And they do a lot of good. And it's a reminder, to me, I think of the good that came out of a mess.
And there is, but if you notice, if you ever go look at those 12 tribes, a lot of times there's a lot of jealousy between the tribes. Where do you think that came from?
Family tradition.
Family tradition. A lot of those things come on. So then, and you see it here with Joseph, you know.
Yeah.
Now, here's the point I was going to make. How old do you think Jacob is at this time? When he appears for Pharaoh, he says that the years of his pilgrimage is 130 years. How old was Jacob when he appeared before Pharaoh? 30. And when Jacob comes to Egypt, they're in the second year of famine, because that's what he tells his brothers. The 7 years are gone, and 2 years of famine. He tells them there's 5 more years of famine. So that makes 9 years since he appeared before Pharaoh. So Joseph is now 39. If Jacob's 130 and he's 39, that makes him Jacob 91. Approximately when Joseph is born. I make that point because it says that Joseph and Benjamin were children of his old age. Huh?
Say, go up.
Cloak. And there's an interesting point. Of all this jealousy and everything, Leah comes out on top. Notice in chapter 35, after they came back, then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel labored in childbirth, and she had hard labor. Now it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, you will have this son also." And so it was, as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Ask the question, who did, we probably knew who Rachel was, who do you think he called mama? Look at chapter 37, verse 9 and 10. Speaking to Joseph, then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bow down to me." So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" Who is Jacob referring to as his mother? Leah.
Or one of the other two ladies.
Leah.
How old was, we know how old Rachel was?
We have no idea how old Rachel or,
Because I figured she's at least 7.
don't, Jacob, you know, offhand, Jacob's probably somewhere 65 to 70 when he went. I was looking, and I had it before, and I re-looked it up today. Isaac died at 180. Esau and Isaac married Rebekah when he was 40. He was 60 when Esau and Jacob were born. means when he died, he lived another 120 years. So even though he was of his old age, when he gave the blessing to Jacob, he had made a statement. He saw that he was blind, he was old, but I do not know the day of my death. And he was at least 100 years old then. So he might have gave the blessing a little prematurely. I think he did. And in fact, when you look it up, you'll see that Esau and Jacob are together and buried their father. And it tells them that he was 180 years old. And in that timeline, if you look at it, Isaac saw a partial fulfillment of God's promise because he saw all the 12 tribes. He was alive when Joseph was carried away. He died about 10 years, about the time Joseph got out of prison. He didn't go into Egypt with him, but it wasn't by far, about 10 years beforehand. And so, there's that point, but, there's something when we think about it, how God can work things out and care for what you wish for, or careful how you treat. Why would God spare Leah but allow Rachel to die? That she was Jacob's favorite wife. Not sure exactly why, but Rachel had a problem Leah didn't. She believed in the multiplicity of God. When they left Laban, she stole Laban's idols, household idols. Rachel did. And when Laban chases them down to try to get them back, Jacob doesn't know anybody stole them. And he says, whoever you find on them, you kill them. They're yours to kill. And the only way she got away with it was she had hidden, as the New King James, the idols in the saddle of the camel. And then sat on them and said, when he wanted to look in the saddle to check the camel, she said, forgive me, for I am in the way of women. What'd she mean? She was unclean. She was in the cycle. I can't get up. And that's how she got away with keeping the idols. Shortly before Benjamin's death, God speaks to Jacob and said, get all the idols out of your house and destroy them. Or get rid of all the idols in your house. And he found those idols and he went and buried them. Now, Curtis Manor supposes that part of the reason of her dying was the loss of those idols. Because even though they were false gods, her belief so strong in them that they might not have been with her could have caused her to give up strength. I don't think that's part of it. I think that was just part of God's plan. I think God saw who was the better mother. I think Rachel was a very selfish person. Very kind of the spoiled brat of the bunch. And look how Jacob treated Joseph and later Benjamin. Don't think for a minute
he was playing favorite.
That's it. He played favoritism with those boys. Why? Because they were the sons of Rachel. And I have no doubt that he shared that favoritism on Rachel all the years that she was alive, that he was married to her. And so when we look at it, I heard one preacher said it was be better to be a teary-eyed and righteous woman than a beautiful, ugly woman. he said. He said even though she may have been beautiful in appearance, deep down, she was kind of ugly. And Jacob was too blind to see it. But it always struck me as interesting that Leah would be the one to raise up Joseph and Benjamin. And who was the most righteous son Jacob had? Joseph. I think the others grew up to be right, but at most, he was considered a righteous man. And so we have to realize the role that these two women played in bringing up the country of Israel, the tribes of Israel, and that they were very needful.
They weren't raised in that conflict either.
Hmm?
They weren't raised in that conflict. You can only imagine the household would be like the kids. With mama and
Oh,
mama.
yeah,
always
the
fighting.
kids weren't raised.
Fighting,
Joseph wasn't.
backstabbing, lying.
Yeah, and that kind of gives you an idea. Look at the ones that did grow up in that conflict. The older sons, what did they do? They sold Joseph into slavery. They were going to kill him.
Reuben slept with his father's concubine.
Reuben slept with his father's concubine.
That's what he saw.
That's what he saw. Jacob rebuked him for it, but at the same time, so, when you think about how those children raised up in that conflict, how they turned out, whereas when Joseph was raised up, there wasn't that conflict.
Simeon and Levi killed all of those
All the people of the,
Hittites.
yeah,
Well, the idolatry was at first Abraham's father.
yeah,
That's why, one reason he said to be here.
yeah.
But then, where his family settled, Laban and the Bethuel, I don't know for sure, but they may have been idols.
Oh, Laban had idols because he took the idols from,
So that's where Rachel came from.
yeah, Rachel stole those idols. But so,
Grandfather would be here.
well, Leah came from the same lineage.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, I think you had more like Ruth and Leah.
Yeah.
Your God will be my God.
Yeah.
I think Leah saw what God had actually done for her and opened up her womb and everything, that she didn't need idols.
Which you can see where that came from.
Yeah, you can see where it came from. And that was, I think that was the other point too, huh?
She had a jealous streak against Rachel, so who's to say that if she didn't see the favoritism of Joseph, then she wasn't jealous of those kids?
That medicine reminder. No, what did you say? I didn't hear it.
I said Leah was jealous of Rachel because of the favoritism, and she had to see the favoritism of
Yeah.
Joseph and Benjamin. So who's to say she wasn't jealous of them either?
Well, I don't think she was as jealous of them as she was distraught in. There's a point of realizing someone showing somebody else favoritism and realize that it's mistreating you.
But you could see her doing that for Benjamin because she would have had to take him when he was born.
Oh, yeah. And Joseph was at a young age still, so there was a point, and that's the point. Since she takes them, she raises them of their own, and it's probably a satisfaction. You're dead, and I'm raising your children.
But that's not a good heart
I
either.
was gonna say, I hope that wasn't the attitude. Pretty rough. That's a baby sister too.
Well, I understand that, but there's some satisfaction, not that she's taking pleasure in death, but now your children realize what God has done for her. Larry.
It just reminds me, that's where they got all them soap operas out there, been reading.
Oh, yeah.
Calling what?
Soap operas.
Soap operas, yeah, they're soap opera.
Yeah. Ron, real quick.
One thing maybe that we can learn about God in all of this is that it's told us later on that God is no respecter of persons, and that he had a plan in all of this, and through this whole mess of what we can't make heads or tails out of some of it, his plan was going forward the whole time. This wasn't like, oh, well, they messed up, so I gotta change plans.
Right,
This is my plan, and this is the way that it's gonna work, and it doesn't matter who it was that's involved in it, because God was no respecter of person.
Right, God wasn't respecting, and he saw, we gotta remember this, God allowed certain things, God directly intervened for certain things, just because he knew how it would best suit his plan. And that would lead in the wrong. Because he didn't work the plan all the way down the road.
Laban worshiped idols, and yet God came to him as a patriarch and said, don't you say nothing bad to Jacob,
Yeah,
either
yeah.
good or bad.
Good, don't say good or bad, and don't you do him any harm.
And
And
so he was still speaking to the heads of households, even
Well,
though they were idol worshipers.
I think Laban went down there with the, originally with the intent, I'm getting my daughters and I'm getting my
He was gonna
flock
kill
back.
them all and take his daughters.
Yeah,
Sheep back.
yeah, the herd back and get all my wealth and everything that God appeared to him. The only way you're gonna be able to do that is kill Jacob. You're doing harm to Jacob, I'm gonna revisit it on you. It's not gonna help you at all. But that point. But there is something, you point out, there's things we need to remember, we'll reap what we sow. You know, if you think about Rachel, and her conniving, she basically took Jacob from Leah, but then she lost him in her own death.
Jacob got the blessing. But look what
Yeah,
it cost him.
and those things, and I think it led to not just Joseph being a righteous son, but eventually those other sons realizing. It's interesting if you ever take time to look at it. We're not going to get into it tonight. We ain't got time. But the fact that in the middle of Joseph's story, you have Judah's story. Chapter 37, they sell him into slavery. In chapter 38, it's spent all about Judah. 39 picks up with Joseph's story. And look at the change in Judah at that time versus when they go down the second time to Egypt. He's a different person he was than when he sold his brother into slavery. So a lot of things God did to influence the people. And we got to realize that mothers influence children. It's been said the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. So I think God wants us to see that. You know, the whole thing of God wants us to understand not just how things came about, but to see the conflict in personalities so we can try to understand how we ought to be better and how we ought to make wiser decisions. You know, I heard it said once, a fool has to make his own mistakes. What does that mean? Somebody that refuses to learn from mistakes of others when they're plain as day and repeats those mistakes has to be a fool. And believe me, if we're honest, when we make our own mistakes and knew we shouldn't have, we'll judge ourselves as foolish. What's your song?
904.
904. So if I try to get done on time, Don. Try to get done earlier. Those two over there. But anyway, we'll sing that and be dismissed.
Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing?